Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. I'm Tulio Sergusa, broadcasting from Southern California, and today I'm joined by Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico, and
Hello.
Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico. Hi,
Pleasure to
guys.
be here as ever.
Of course, our guest today is Franz Hoang, who's with boodleAI. And thanks for joining us, Franz. We're looking forward to speaking with you.
Pleasure
And today, we're going to be talking about the new oil. That's right. We're talking about data. Data is the new oil. And what are the opportunities that AI is going to afford us when it comes to data, how we can make it actionable? But before we go into all that, let's get to know Franz a little bit. Please introduce yourself. Tell us all about you. And then we'll talk about your company right after. Franz, please tell us about you.
Well, Tulio, Carlos, Kimberly, it's an absolute pleasure to join you all today. So just a quick intro of myself. So if I had to pick one word to introduce myself, it would probably be unemployable. I came to the United States as a refugee from Vietnam at 18 months old, grew up in a small town, wanted to give back to the US for helping me and my family escape communism. So I went to West Point, joined the military, served for a number of years, including being a peacekeeper. Then had the first of several career pivots, became a lawyer. Frankly, wasn't that great of a lawyer, but still ended up working at the White House under President Bush. Then in my mid-30s, I rejoined the Army and deployed to Afghanistan and served in combat with a company of U.S. Army Special Forces, and then came back and, because my risk tolerance at that point was at an all-time high, became an entrepreneur. And I've been on the founding teams of multiple companies, the most recent of which is boodleAI.
Wow. So before 30, you had what most people do an entire lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty amazing.
I would argue more than what most people do.
More. I was going to say, wait, that was just before 30? And also you ran a dojo too, right? There's a little history about, we were talking about the name Dojo Live. Didn't you have a dojo as well? You are a karate teacher?
So close. After the military and before I went to law school, I was what's called an uchi deshi. So uchi means house, deshi means student. I lived and trained in a school of Japanese swordsmanship in Japan and was basically an apprentice to a Japanese swordmaster. And then years later became a sensei, a teacher myself, and helped run a school of Japanese swordsmanship just outside of Washington, D.C.
Awesome. Fantastic. Tell us about
Is that your background or is that a filter? Because I was going to say the elk would attest we don't want to mess with France.
Well, he's a West Point graduate. He's a lawyer, so if he can't beat you somehow with the sword, he'll argue with you. And he was at the White House. Anybody who can handle that can handle anything. So, tell us about boodleAI. What's the company doing? What is it all about?
Yeah, Boodle, in a word, is a cloud-based enriched analytics provider. So what does that mean? Data is the new oil. You mentioned that earlier. We're a refinery. So to make data, just like oil, useful, you've got to refine it. You've got to turn it into something that people can use. And then you got to get it to a place where they can use it. And so what we do is we take the data people already have, contact information. We enrich it with up to 1,200 additional data points per contact. And then we produce things that are useful to people, predictions, insights, analytic reports, and then we deliver it in a way that people can use. And so we help sales teams, marketing teams, fundraising teams find additional growth in their sales, marketing, and fundraising campaigns.
Very cool. All right, let's go right into the topic and see what we can learn. Carlos?
Absolutely. And I'm not on mute. Today, we're going to be speaking about AI adoption, challenges, and opportunities for tech companies and customers. That's the topic that our guest chose for today. So the first question that I have for you, Franz, is why did you choose this particular topic? Why did you feel it was relevant for this day and age? Let's start with that. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Carlos. So one of my favorite TV series, which I really recommend to everybody, but in particular if you're an entrepreneur, is the History Channel's The Men Who Built America. And it's about the Gilded Age 100 years ago, where we had all these new industries, the automobile, railroads, oil, and we had huge industries pop up around them and dominated by a few figures, right? Rockefeller, Ford, Vanderbilt, Carnegie, and they changed the face of America. They changed the way we work. And if you think about it, the same thing is happening again, right? But it's not oil, it's data. It's not cars and roads, it's social media. And it's not the assembly line, which changed the way people did manual automated work, right? It automated manual work. We have AI and machine learning, which is automating intellectual work. And just like back then, it's lots of change going on. So I think often about Henry Ford. He was actually, despite what people think, was not the inventor of the car. What he managed to do was get people to get out of their horse and buggy and into the car. And as one of many people who are working at this intersection of AI and growth and big data, I think one of the principal challenges anybody who's either the consumer of AI or the provider of AI is adoption. How do you get people out of the horse and buggy and into the car?
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I love the analogy. So let's just go in a little bit deeper here. You said boodleAI is like the refinery of the data. I love the simplicity of that. It's you can visualize it, you can understand it. I started thinking, wow, this is fracking we can all agree to. No one's going to argue with this kind of fracking. So what is the primary use cases today, and where are the opportunities that are being missed, in your opinion?
Yeah, so the primary use cases, right? Every organization that does sales or marketing or fundraising has the same challenge, which is, where do I spend my valuable time and money? We all, in organizations have limited resources. And so, you got to make priorities. So which leads do you go after? Which customers do you reconnect with? And when you do that, what do you ask them for? How do you deliver the right message? Where do you go after them? And so there's all these questions that need to be answered. And using data refined through AI allows you to have better insights and analytics to make better decisions. And so whether it's a nonprofit that is trying to decide which of my 10,000 donors do I go back to and ask for an additional donation, and how do I approach them and what do I ask, or whether it is a for-profit direct-to-consumer company trying to decide what product do I offer where, and what is the persona of the people I should target, perhaps with online ads. These are questions that need to be answered. And so AI, by leveraging the data that people have, combining it with the data that is out there, can help answer those questions.
Nice. Okay.
I got a quick question. And this, I couldn't help but noticing or zeroing in on your tagline, which is "Data is the new oil," right? So, would it be? From your perspective, would it be fair to say that just like oil has, how can I say this without getting into too political? Just like oil has played a major role in sometimes creating global interests, across the globe. Would you say that data might act along the same lines in a way that there might be, entire countries that are going to be using data in a way that's going to work for the benefit of their own agenda? What do you think about that? Is this a possibility?
That is a very deep question. I thought we were just going to talk about AI and growing companies. So the short answer is yes. Data is the new oil, and there's going to be a competition for data, just like there is a competition for oil. For example, right, China, they have a different history in terms of what they treat in terms of what's private. There is less of a line between government and industry. And so they are collecting massive amounts of data. To make AI work, you need four things. You need data, you need computing power, you need the software, and you need the algorithms or the models that are derived from the algorithms. China, because of the way they're structured, can collect vast amounts of data about their people. That gives them an edge. On the opposite end, in terms of approach to privacy and data, the European Union has just passed or has a legislation, I'm not sure if it's passed or not, about the use of AI and the standards. And it's very similar to the GDPR Act in terms of how it treats infractions. A company that violates it is fined up to 4% of their global revenue. And so they're trying to establish a new standard in terms of like how companies use AI. So I think there is going to be a competition over data, and there's going to be a competition over how data is managed and who has access to it and how that can cross the nation state borders and how people use it within those borders.
Appreciate it. Thanks. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything, but it was just I couldn't help it. I mean, I was like, wow, data is the new oil. It's just very compelling, right?
Yeah.
So
Well-
and finally, how does that translate into the actionable insights part?
Well, if I could build on that question, I mean, look, anytime you have something of value, you're going to have conflict, right? You're going to compete for it. The challenge I've seen so far with AI is that it's limited to large data sets, which means if you're a company that has, lots of customers and at least a lot of transactions that you can actually, refine and study, then it works really well. But if you're a company that doesn't have those large data sets, doesn't have the number of transactions, it's more challenging, if not impossible.
Yeah.
Is that gap being bridged? Is that possible? How is that? Where are we today?
Yeah.
in bridging that so AI becomes useful even for a small business who can make better decisions with it?
Yeah. So I think you're absolutely 100% right. I think there's three major challenges to AI adoption. The first is AI requires big data. So how does even a small organization get access to big data, and how do you do that, right? The second is how do you make that data useful, right? There's a question of, you get all these analytics and insights, you present it to someone, they're overwhelmed. They ask, the question we hear a lot, so what, now what? What am I supposed to do with this? And the third is how do you make it price accessible, right? So let me tackle each of those in turn, because you asked about two of those. What we're doing at Boodle is we have built a matching engine that takes what we call skinny data sets of just names and emails, names and phone numbers, names and mailing addresses, data that every organization has. And we built an engine that figures out who those people are in the real world. And then we bring in over 1,000 data points about each person. And so we take what are small data sets and we turn them into big data sets. But we keep those data sets in our system. We don't sell or share data. That's not our model. We're not selling people's data to other organizations. We are providing insights and analytics. And so that's the way we're solving the first problem. The second problem of so what, now what, we're not just delivering these raw insights and analytics. I mean, we can, right? You can go in and score a record and see like, hey, Johnny Robles is a better prospect than Jane Gonzalez. But what's far better is to create reports that deliver actionable insights. And so we actually take those insights and analytics and combine them into reports that address particular use cases. There's a set of what we call optimization bundles that are around certain use cases, like finding new customers or finding repeat donors. And we deliver the reports that answer those questions, that provide a decision maker, oh, that's what I should do next, or those are some ideas. The third thing about how to make it accessible to people, we recently switched to a different model of pricing. A lot of analytic platforms are like Ferraris. They're shiny, they're sleek, they do a ton of things. They take that oil and now you can go super fast, right? And you go lots of different places. Here's the thing. A lot of people don't want a Ferrari. They don't need a Ferrari. They just want to go home or they just want to pick up their groceries. So we have switched at Boodle recently to what we call usage-based pricing. You don't have to buy the Ferrari. You can just rent an Uber for a ride, essentially, on our analytics platform. So you pay for what you need and pay for what you want. So if you just want some wealth scoring, we provide you that. If you want to build a custom model, you just buy that part and you pay for it. Do you want just one optimization bundle? You pay for that and that's what you get. And so we're democratizing data by making it accessible to everybody through turning data into big data, providing reports that are easy to understand, and providing all of this on a usage-based pricing model.
Brilliant.
Franz, I have something else. You were talking about challenges and opportunities for tech companies and customers, right? Which is what boodleAI is about.
Yep.
Let me go back a little. A while ago, we had, Kim, you might remember this, we had the opportunity to have a conversation with a gentleman he had a very interesting life. He was an adventurer. He remember Yossi Ginsberg, Kim. So he went through a lot. He had very interesting experiences in life that were not necessarily related to the tech world. However, these experiences, he saw an opportunity to turn all this information, all these experiences into something of use. And he created a couple of very interesting tech companies. One of them, I think it was called Blink. So the bottom line is this, friends. You also have a very interesting background, right? So you were in the military, you're a lawyer, but now you're in tech. So what I would like to ask you is, and this might be also of interest for those viewers out there who are thinking of embarking on the tech entrepreneurial ship, what made you decide to go this route? What made you decide, or how did you discover that, well, this is something that I'm going to start because I have an interest in technology and artificial intelligence? What was the aha moment that made you go this way? That would be interesting to know.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. So all my life, I've been driven by a desire to serve, born out of the fact that even from a young age, I realized that, but for the service of others, I would not be in the United States and would not have all the wonderful opportunities I had. And so, I served first in uniform, then later I served in government, then later I served my clients as a lawyer and an advocate. And then, frankly, as an entrepreneur, I feel like I'm continuing my journey of service. I think at heart, all great entrepreneurs are driven by a desire to serve. But the way they serve as an entrepreneur is they have found something they're really passionate about. They believe that they have an idea for a product or service that is going to help other people. And it helps other people because people are willing to pay for it, right? They find value in it. And they derive great joy from serving others through creating something that wasn't there before and seeing it make a difference in the world. And so for me, this is just a continuation of a journey of service. And it touches upon a number of things I'm passionate about. I love connecting people. I'm very interested in emerging technology like AI. And frankly, at heart, I'm a big geek and I've always liked data.
I love that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, friends. Go, Kim.
Thank you. In the spirit of service, I would postulate, or a question maybe ask, maybe there's a fourth component to the AI. I think you mentioned like getting the data, actionable items, and making it easily accessible. Where does the ethics come in of obtaining that data? I think that, like, I would postulate that, I don't know if that's a chicken or the egg or where it comes in those four. But let's talk about that. I think because this is something, you've got Social Dilemma that's come up on Facebook or Netflix right now, and people are like, and I'm hearing 1,200 data points on little old me. Like, who the heck cares? And what are those data points? So let's talk about that, like, if we could.
Yeah. So we are in the early days of AI and data science and big data. If you, depending on who you count, right, we're either in the fourth industrial revolution or the fifth. Let's go back, right? Let's think about the early days of the automobile. Or let's even go back 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was a young child, I rode in the backseat of my car, no seatbelt, no child seat. I was 7 years old. We had a bench seat, and if the car went—
Here's to sleeping on the floorboards, y'all.
Yeah. If we were going 20 miles an hour around a corner, I slid from one side of the car to the other. In fact, when I was 7 years old, once I did that, I hit the door and I actually rolled out of the car, right? Like, we would all be aghast now, right? If you saw some kid sitting like in the back of a pickup truck going down the freeway, you probably call Child Protective Services. You're like, oh my goodness, right? I think people are going to look back 30, 40 years from now about the way we handle data, privacy, even the way we allowed algorithms to be, in the wild, and probably have the similar view of how we viewed automobile safety, 30, 40 years ago, and let alone 100 years ago. So we're in the early days. It's the wild, wild west. I absolutely agree, Kim, that ethical AI is a very important consideration, especially considering, unlike a car where you can see it barreling down the road and you can see if it's dangerous, you can't tell that of an algorithm, right? Algorithms control a lot of things. Think about, it controls what you see on a social media feed. It controls what you pay for an Uber ride. It controls what the person makes per hour working for Uber, right? Or another rideshare service. I don't mean to just pick out Uber, but So where we get the data, how we build these algorithms, and where we allow algorithms to be used are all very important questions. There's a framework that's out there called FAT, right? Algorithms and models, AI should be fair, it should be accountable, and it's transparent. And that's a good starting point, right? We don't want algorithms that are biased, and they're often biased because of the data sets they're based upon. We want them to be transparent. People should know that algorithms are being used and how they're being used and what the basis for the algorithmic decision making is. And then finally, they need to be accountable. If there's something going on we don't agree with, we should have the ability to hold someone accountable or be able to opt out. And so, I think we can all agree those sound like good ideas. The question is, how do we implement it?
I'm going to go back a little bit to the earlier conversation. Clearly, AI is being adopted by the marketing organization, sales organization, customer success organizations to improve the ability to have better touch points, to learn patterns, to predict where possible what's next. And there's a lot of challenges there when it comes to bias and ethics, because unfortunately the data sets sometimes repeat historical trends that had bias built into them. So there's a challenge in itself, but it seems like that's being solved by awareness. Where are the opportunities that are being missed? I'm curious to learn the sectors of the market where they are primed to take advantage of this to improve how they're serving their customers, but aren't. Are there certain industries or verticals that they're not adopting as quickly, but there's huge opportunities? What are you seeing?
Yeah, in terms of industries or verticals, I tend to think in terms of problems that are being solved, and they often cut across industries and verticals. Let me take a different tack in the way of answering it in terms of where are the opportunities for technology companies to really, I think, leap ahead in terms of AI adoption. So part of the challenge right now is when you talk about predictive analytics, right? I'm telling you that person A is a better prospect than person B. Right now, there's a huge leap of faith. I don't have the transparency oftentimes in the scoring. Models are often black boxes, they're very opaque. And so you've got the problem where people just don't accept the recommendations or the prediction because they don't know how it works, right? You spend an entire lifetime developing experience and expertise around something, and now a model is going to tell you what to do. A lot of people just simply won't do it. So getting users to adopt AI recommendations is one challenge. The second is, when they do, they often implement them wrong because the assumptions are wrong. I think the solution here is building at what I call the AI human kind of team, right? AI should not be thought of as a solution and a substitute. There are things that AI, machine learning, big data do well, recognize patterns, find relationships in the data. But there are things that human beings do far better, or only human beings can do. Exercise judgment, understand the relationships between people, understand context. And so building AI that enhances human decision-making and relationships instead of replacing it, I think that's the future, enhancing the human AI team. And I think that's where I'm excited about the possibilities. That's where I think if you're a tech person, finding that correct interface and developing it, right, for your particular industry, finding out how to get AI adopted for people to trust it and then get actionable decision-making out of it, I think that's where the opportunity is.
It's probably why Gardner predicted that AI-based virtual assistant or those kinds of solutions would have a huge wave for the next 10 years, because that's ultimately what it's about, right? And how do we use it so that you can make better decisions using those other things that the machine can't use, like cognitive thinking and intuition sometimes that you've developed over the years. So let's shift a little bit about the company, because we're coming up on time. We got like 5 minutes left. You've got a cool product. You're solving the big dilemma for the smaller companies who don't have the data sets to enrich it, which is a big challenge. Have to go buy the data sets. You have to ingest it. You've got so much. It's a huge endeavor. So you're solving that. Congratulations. It's awesome. You got to have some cool people working with you to make all that happen that are passionate about that. What does it look like a day in the life boodleAI for someone coming in? We have a lot of engineers who listen to the show who might be interested in coming to work for you. What does that look like? What kind of culture have you created that you're proud of?
I love that word, culture. So I think it's the most, I've been a part of 4 different founding teams. Culture is critical to the success of the company. I often say the recipe for a successful company is 1% idea, 49% people, and 50% execution. So in other words, 99% culture, right? If you do the math. So we have tried to build a culture that fits our company. So there is no one winning culture. The culture is very much dependent on your company, what you're building, and who you're building it with. We look for people who are passionate about our product, about the customers we serve, and most importantly, about the people they work alongside. In fact, one of the things I do when I interview people is I tell them all the reasons they shouldn't join Boodle. And I actually literally walk through like, here's the values that we have, and here's the things that are important. And if they're not important to you, then this isn't the place for you, because it's, culture starts with, culture isn't something you put on a PowerPoint slide and brief people after they join. It starts with the people that join. And so if you want to develop a certain culture and maintain the culture you have, that should be an integral part of your interview process. And you should make it very clear to everyone who's applying and eventually joining, like, this is the culture that they're going to become a part of and become a part of.
Cool. Guys, have any additional questions before we wrap up?
I feel kind of bad asking this because I really like the note that you left the show on, but I do have one, and that would be going back to actionable items. Is there a particular case study or story that you could share of how boodleAI has positively impacted one of your users?
Yes. So one of the use cases is analyzing past campaigns. And so oftentimes with marketing and sales teams, you talk to them and they know who their best customers are. They know their ideal customer persona. And so we had a customer brought in, they had us analyze a past campaign. It was actually an agency, so it's one of their customers. And the customer told them, oh, we do really well with Republicans. And we're able to identify whether people lean Republican or Democrat. Well, when we looked at the past campaign, it turns out they actually did better with people who lean Democrats. But they reached out, because they believed they did better with Republicans, they reached out to 5 times as many Republican-leaning people as Democrats. And so obviously, right, 20% of 100 people still gets you more people than 40% of 20 people. So this is a classic example of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because I believe something's true, I act on it, and that creates the very thing I believe is true. One of the wonderful things about enriching data and then using analytics and AI and machine learning and deploying predictive models is the data speaks for itself. And so we were able to go back to this agency and say, look, your customer actually does better with Democrats. And we're able to identify those people who lean that way. So in future campaigns, right, can take this into consideration. You now have an actionable thing to do, which is, in the next campaign, target more folks that lean this direction to see if you get a higher response rate, and that will make a difference in your future campaign.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. Looks like you guys are off to the races there. What's next? What's the next step for boodleAI?
Yeah, so right now we have a platform. People pull information. We have these reports that push information. We want to meet our customers where we're at. Frankly, I want to get into people's inboxes rather than meet them where they're at. We want to kick down the doors to their home or their office and put the actionable data there. So we're building out an API that will automatically update these data stores that we have. And then we're going to create a subscription service so that these reports are pushed out automatically to people's inboxes. So imagine you're a CEO. Every Monday you come in and you get an analytic report that shows you the personas and the trends on who your customers were for the past week, as well as ideas, actionable insights that you can use for this following week's campaigns. And there's no platform. There's no analysis to be done. The analysis is just sitting there in your inbox.
Brilliant. Well, it's been great to have you as our guest. We're up on time. Please just stay with us as we go off the air. But before we do, let's announce what else we got coming up this week. Carlos, what do we got coming up?
We have 2 more shows, Tulio, tomorrow and Thursday. Tomorrow is the one with Anne-Sophie Leblost, the CEO of Rabicon. The topic is going to be Industry 4.0, or the dawn of the new supply chain manager. And then on Thursday, we're going to be speaking with Mayor Goldberg, I hope I pronounced it correctly, and the founder and CEO of A Policy. And the topic is going to be security and compliance automation for DevOps and DevSecOps, Dev Security Ops. Like that. So that's what we have for this week, right here in Dojo Live, as ever, at 12 p.m. Pacific. Join us.
Thanks for being with us. See you back tomorrow at noon Pacific.
See you then. Thank you.
Be well.